Welcome to the FitMoney podcast, where we'll discuss something we all need throughout our entire life, financial literacy, but also asking the tough question, why aren't students learning it? Financial literacy is more than the math, and a behavior we'll need beyond the classroom. So we're learning how we can help students, families, and teachers build a new generation of financially fit students everywhere. On today's episode, FitMoney Executive Director Jessica Pelletier sits down with Jim Curran, the Financial Know-How Program Manager at Cape Cod Five, to discuss the impact Credit for Life fairs are making for financially fit futures, his work with financial education for students of all ages, how learning about money is evolving through generations, and finally, how getting ahead of financial-related stress can lead to a larger sense of well-being.
Hey, Jim. Great to see you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jess. It's awesome to be on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have so much in common, so I'm really excited to talk today. But the first thing I want to ask you, Jim, is first of all, tell me your title, because I think it's one of the best out there, and explain exactly what it means.
So my title is Financial Know-How Program Manager. It's a mouthful, but it is actually very much on purpose. You're right. So our community engagement efforts are expressed in 5 ways at Cape Cod Five. So it's community banking, it's responsible business practices, it's corporate leadership and volunteerism, philanthropy, and then finally the advancement of financial know-how, which is my role at Cape Cod Five.
That's great. So tell me more about that. You are really passionate about financial literacy, which is how you and I came together. And so, in your role, do you educate your clients specifically, families? How do you achieve that?
Yeah, great question. So originally, where I stepped in is there was a vacancy. I stepped in when I was a management trainee, and I started to help out with our Credit for Life fairs. That has
Mhm.
been really the central part of our financial know-how program. And so I learned from the folks that were already doing it. Eventually, I did take on the role in a full-time way. And within the student arena, within the high school arena, I have been asked to see if we could start making Credit for Life a capstone. So, how
Mhm.
can we incorporate other financial know how opportunities for students? The second thing I started to take on almost immediately was working with our councils on aging. So, very specifically, doing fraud awareness there and also doing some end of life planning at the councils on aging. The big one that we're starting to work on right now is the one that you alluded to. So, we're actually starting to get a lot into workplace banking. So, going to clients, non clients, if a business invites us, we go. Where we do lunch and learns, we might do a workshop series. We work with some of community vendors that are doing wellness series that we will step in on. So at this point, I'm meeting with middle schoolers, high schoolers, adults, and senior citizens, and meeting them where they are on their journey.
That's great. That is quite the span of ages there and financial needs. But tell me something that they all have in common that you really try to get across when you meet with them.
They all have in common something that I initially heard when I still hear it at every Credit for Life, and I'll hear the phrase, "Boy, I wish this was around when I was a kid." And then I'll hear the students say, "Oh my God, how do my parents do this?" And I think the interesting thing is now that I am working with their parents are saying the same thing. It's that I wish this was around when I was a kid, but they don't know. And so whether you're talking to young adults, older adults, people in retirement, there is a huge knowledge gap
Mhm.
where when I'm stepping in with basic financial wellness and budget habits, 401ks, Roth IRAs, responsible budgeting, looking at interest rates, first time home buyer, they are hearing all of this for the first time.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I see across the ways is that there's no one that's ever sitting there half interested.
Mhm.
You know, every single time I'm in the room, I have every set of eyes on me, which is really fun. You know that you're hitting them at home.
I completely agree. One of the things I love about being a proponent of financial literacy, and certainly what we do here at FitMoney, providing curriculum, is that this is actually a topic that students want to learn. There are a lot out there that I think they kind of begrudgingly sit through their classes because they know they're required to do it. But this is one of those that you do get those eager eyes and lots of questions. And it's so interesting. And I ask this question a lot, but why do you think it is taboo of sorts to talk about money? Why is there such a knowledge gap?
I think there's a couple of different reasons to that. I think generationally, we were raised at a time where it was rude to talk
Mm,
about money, even inside the family. My parents are 75 years old. I still have to draw this out of them. Where can I help? Where, you want to start handing some of this stuff over to me. We just don't talk about it. I remember hearing credit cards are for emergencies. That's about it. That was the extent of it. I also think that when I go into schools and I'm doing credit for life or I'm doing a one-off speaking in a class, I'll have a teacher pull me aside and say, "Listen, can you help me with more of this content? Can you help me with a little bit of lesson planning? This just got dropped in my lap, and if they saw my financial situation, like, they would never have given this to me." So there's like this panic of like, why are they asking me to teach this? I don't even know it myself. I think it's maybe something that happened 30, 40 years ago propagates itself, right? Where it's just over and over. The next generation doesn't know, so they don't teach it.
Well, hopefully you and I can fix that, and continuing to talk
Exactly
about
right.
this and putting out episodes and really just letting people know that yes, you don't have to plaster your paycheck to your forehead, and we don't have to get into the specifics of what you paid for your house and things like that. But yes, the behavioral aspects of personal finance, just good decision making and what the tools are that are out there, especially these days, the really wonderful savings tools, both for saving for
Hmm.
now, saving for retirement. So you've mentioned it now a couple times, and I know what it is, but tell the folks listening, what is a Credit for Life fair, and how does Cape Cod Five support its community schools with it?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So we're actually in the 13th year of partnering with local schools. We started with Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School 13 years ago to put on these fairs. And what we do is we put up, right now it's 10 booths. It used to be
Mhm.
14, where the students take on a future role as a 25-year-old. They're just starting out as young adults. They've got a job. We have them get an apartment. We have them buy a car. We have them set up money for retirement and savings. And at each individual booth, they need to go through a series of decisions and decide where they want their money to go. They start to see, if I put my money toward this, I can't do that.
Mhm.
Because we have built the website, a lot of the mathematics or the arithmetic has been taken out, which has been wonderful, because
Mhm.
what it does is it allows the students to spend more time talking to volunteers and asking them, just what would you do? Tell me, I want to buy
Mhm.
a car. What would you do? And I always tell the volunteers, just give the advice that you wish you heard when you were a student,
Mhm.
you know. And so it's usually about an hour and a half long. We've started to branch out and start doing some gamification of it. We do a Q&A afterwards. We might hand out gift cards for good questions.
It's so great. I mean, I think, look, as an adult, we all learn by doing. At least I do. I don't want to just be passively kind of lectured to. I want to really get my hands wet and try things out. And so I really enjoyed. I volunteered at the fair and certainly have helped with the technology platform put it together. I just love that the students can, in a safe space, because we know that the salary that they get from their fictional 25-year-old self is not real, and
Yep.
like you said, they can be very aspirational, I think, in their first budget, buy the brand new
Yep.
car, buy the one
Yep.
bedroom condo with no roommates, and eat all organic.
Yep.
And then they realize, like you said, they took the math out of it, so they don't have to scratch their heads when they want to maybe make a change, but they can go back and say, oh, maybe that brand new car wasn't such a good idea. But it's so exciting to see kids come to that realization that that plan, that budget is so important. And they, I'm sure you've heard the same experiences of kids saying, "Wow, I never knew how hard it was to be an adult," or "Gosh, do my parents do this every every time?"
It's funny because I do hear that every time. Oh my God, how do my parents do this? But what I really try to encourage the kids, because sometimes we'll get those kids that are all of a sudden terrified.
Mhm.
They're $800 in debt in this fake checking account, and they're so terrified all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm going to stink at this. And I tell them, no, 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 no. You just won. You
Mhm.
ran the numbers ahead of time
Right.
rather than buying the car, getting the condo, then realizing that you're bleeding $1,000 a month, and your wellness is affected because you're looking at 4, 5, 6 years of chasing bills.
Mhm.
So you run the numbers ahead of time, see how you do, make some changes, run the numbers again. So I always try to encourage them, run it a couple of times, but if you fell short, pat yourself on the back.
Mhm.
Now you really know why you want to do this ahead of time rather than afterwards.
And I think that gets to something right there. I've seen surveys, and I'm sure you have as well, that one of the items that causes the most amount of stress in an adult's life today, and probably even more so after the past 3 years, is your finances. And I mean, health is up there certainly, but
Hmm.
finances consistently rates at the top. And it is a shame because, like you said, with a little financial education, starting early, getting these practice runs in, 5 minute stress from that student that would translate to massive amounts of stress in their adult life is pretty much wiped clean. Now, of course, we all know there's highs and lows in any economy. You've mentioned, we've talked about, interest rates are fantastic for savings, and there'll be times where that's not the same. So it's all about resiliency, and it's all about understanding how your decisions need to change as you go through life.
It is, and I think that especially over the last 2 years, we were seeing a lot of stuff on social media that, cash is trash, right? Long term, even if you're an investor, a critical component to being a good investor is having a good safety net of
Hmm.
savings
Hmm.
so that you're not, the idea is to buy and hold, right? Not buy and sell at the bottom of the market because you just lost your job and decided that cash was trash. We always talk about the emotional well-being. I'll never forget, I had a student at Silver Lake High School last year, and the teacher said, okay, picture yourself, you're 25 years old, what do you want to be doing, where do you want to be? And some students are starting to raise their hands about they want to be living on their own, they want to have a job in the city. And this one girl raised her hand and said, I just want to be happy. And I kind of popped out of my seat, and I ended up giving her like a solar charger that we give as a gift. And I said, this is a payment because I'm going to use that story every time I get asked. Because you're right. The quote that I usually use is 41% of adults will say that their finances are their number one causer
Hmm.
of stress.
Hmm.
Um, and if we can get ahead of that in any way and teach this not from a wealth generation perspective, but from a personal emotional wellness perspective, I think we're on the right track.
That is such a great story. I love that because happiness truly is different for everyone.
Hmm.
And it isn't just about how much money you have in the bank. It's, can you do the things you want to do? Some people will inherently save because culturally that's what they've taught to do. Some people would rather make memories and go on vacations and travel, and there's no necessarily right or wrong for every person. It is just about being confident that you're making the right choices for yourself. So that's so powerful.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what really matters to me is that you are just consciously deciding where to direct your resources in a way that suits you rather than I don't even know where my money is
Mhm.
going.
Mhm.
And therefore, down the road, your money is starting to tell you where to go rather than you telling your money where to go. But if you can get those habits in place in the first place, I think one of the great things about credit for life that you were just describing is it creates that feeling,
Mhm.
right? So that feeling of anxiety is now we know you're taking it seriously. That's what's going to imprint rather
Mhm.
than just using a couple of mathematical formulas and, oh, this is how you budget. You take this money here and you put it there. That's easy to say, but you need to involve the emotions. Are you really not going to go out with your friends because you didn't
Mhm.
set aside $25 that week? It gets a little bit more difficult then.
Absolutely. And it just shows, even more so that, and you and I have talked about this, that it is behavioral. It's 100% a behavioral science, financial literacy, and all the more reason that, we are strong proponents of starting as early as possible. We don't learn something like that overnight. And it's certainly not something that you should, learn when you're 18 and you get your first credit card by no means. So
Right.
we're so thrilled to partner with you and Cape Cod Five to really get some great materials and these great programs in the hands of students younger and younger, and really appreciate that partnership. On that end, I know, not to get too personal, but I know you're a dad, and talk to me a little bit about, how you might have brought financial literacy or this kind of awareness, into your kids' lives, and at what age you did that.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it. And so I think for me, you know my story really well. And, I was doing quite well in Washington, D.C. I moved to Cape Cod and I was literally starting from scratch. So a lot of these habits are what I learned to do on my own. And then as I started to grow in the field a little bit, I realized that that was being taught, but it gave me that authenticity, right? When I'm sharing some of these. And my kids watched me go through that so they understand why it matters and why I may nag them a little bit on it. Each of my kids has a credit card, an authorized credit card in my name that they use for their allowance. My son is a sophomore at Virginia Tech. My daughter is a senior in high school. And I tell them the only thing I'm asking you to do is that you track every dollar of your spending. But I want to see in your phone, in a spreadsheet, on a piece of paper, wherever it is, that you've written down every single purchase you've ever made. And just that habit alone,
Mhm.
I think gets you 75% there because you see it, it's right there in front of you, black and white. You know what you're doing with your money. And down the road, when they're
Mhm.
making more money, when they have more bills, that habit's already in place and they know how to start plugging those numbers. My son, I remember my son bringing up to me in high school, he said, if I ever got into Duke, would you let me go there? His mom went to Duke, his uncle went to Duke, his grandfather went to Duke. You can see where the brains in the family came from. It wasn't from me. So I said, absolutely. Like, it's a great school. It'll change your life. But what I'd like you to do is write down a T-bar and explain to me why a degree from Duke is better than a degree from a state school in Virginia, plus a 10% down payment of a house, plus buying your first car in cash. Because it's the exact same thing. You just spent the same money. And so just being able to talk in a real way that he felt to discuss opportunity costs. But let's think about all of the things that we can do with that money in addition to just this one micro decision.
Those are so great. I think what I can see in each of those is just empowering them with the understanding of what their decisions are. I mean, because I think so many students of all ages just don't feel in control. And I think personal finance is about control. And that, when you have that understanding, when you have that knowledge, you will make the right decision. Not 100% of the time. We're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision, but hopefully nothing catastrophic. Because I think had he made the decision to go to Duke, it still would have been wonderful, but it just
100%.
would have forego the other items, which is, he made the
100%.
decision of what was most important to him. So I love those examples. Thank you for sharing those. I hope that others, especially around college, there's so many discussions that we could be having. That's a whole nother whole nother
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
about how to choose college or not. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. I love what you do. I love that Cape Cod Five invests in financial education through you and many other colleagues. Certainly the philanthropy bucket, with FitMoney, we thank you so much for your support of K through 12 financial education. And I just look forward to many more great events to come.
Well, thank you, Jess. And thank you so much for work that you're doing. It's so empowering for me. I was just at Mashpee High School today talking about how I wanted to start incorporating Fit Money into what they do in preparing for their Credit for Life fair. With Falmouth High School,
Mhm.
we are doing a prep 2 weeks before the Credit for Life fair. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, but then I'm going to introduce your Fit Money certification. And we're
Mhm.
going to ask them to go through the certification as a primer for doing the Credit for Life, and we're actually going to raffle off some gift cards for anyone that finishes it. So, our teamwork on this has really been invaluable to me as well. You've also taught me a ton about going younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already starting to work with middle school students, and even a little bit, I've helped out a couple of my colleagues starting to work at the elementary school level as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing, because it really does give me a resource that I trust, that I can bring into the schools and bring into the youth centers, to really augment what I'm trying to do there.
Well, music to my ears. I can't thank you enough, Jim.
So good to see you, Jess. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the FitMoney podcast. Whether you're a caregiver, teacher, or student yourself, there's plenty of great K-12 resources to begin or continue your financial literacy journey at fitmoney.org. Visit the show notes for more from today's guests and financial literacy activities for the classroom, at home, or on the go. We'll see you next time, and until then, happy learning, earning, and saving.
The FitMoney podcast is presented by FitMoney, the leading K-12 financial literacy curriculum providing free, unbiased financial literacy resources. All opinions, products, and references during the show are not endorsed by FitMoney and are solely opinions of the individual. FitMoney does not claim any responsibility for external resources referenced during the episode. All FitMoney products and episodes are provided for educational purposes and are not professional advice.